What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR. Sitting all the way across the city from me this week and every week, he's the king of all VR kings. He's Soap King himself. You're a special one, Mandy. It's Jeremy King.
Wow, so nice. Thank you. And sitting all the way on some big-ass cement building on the opposite side of Worcester, it's Ryan, Paul, and Tornado.
Somewhere. She's around here somewhere. And every week on Why We Love PlayStation VR, we dip into the PSVR archive. We pull out a game at random. We dust the blow off it. We play the crap out of it. We see if it's been given any love by the developers, any updates, any DLC. Then we let you know, the loyal game cats. It's worth your time. That being said, Jeremy, what game did we decide to play this week?
So, what? Transference, the Walter case, was that it? And then just Transference. I'm going to say just Transference.
I love that the only thing you really need to know is the name of the game. Transference, version 1.01, and yes, also the Walter Test Case demo.
Case.
Yeah, it's close enough, man. By Ubisoft Entertainment and SpectraVision. We'll talk about a little bit about them in a second. Released September 17th, 2018 for $24.99. Just heads up, this is version 1.01, so very few patches, just been some general bug fixes, nothing crazy. It's been on sale over 10 times over the last 2 years. It's crazy how many times we see a game that it's been out for a year or two and never been on sale. And then a game like this has been on sale 10 times over the last 2 years for as little as $5 without plus.
Holy. And games that really should be on sale just refuse to go on sale. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I didn't want to go there, but I'm glad you did.
Yeah.
So tell me, my good friend across town, what kind of game is Transference?
This is a puzzle psychological horror title.
Absolutely. And I mean, I want to talk about every single aspect of what you just said. I want to talk about the puzzles. I want to talk about the psychological, like the horror element of it. But ultimately, it is a first-person adventure. DualShock 4 only. Normally, that doesn't bother me, but I do want to get this out of the way a little bit. This is the kind of game, like sort of like Paranormal Activity, the Lost Souls, that I get into this world and I need hands. And so something felt like it was missing right off the bat. I walk into this world. It's a lot of picking up items and then like flipping them over, seeing what's on the other side, and just walking around and like reading little pamphlets and just picking up nonsense, right? Yeah. And I wanted to reach out, grab those things, and do this with my hand and do that. And I need to know if that bothered you too for this game. I know you're a DualShock, like huge DualShock fan.
Right?
Yeah.
You know, it's funny because, yes, I agree with you completely. I think it would be, I mean, I don't want to get too into it, but like that would just add another whole level to it that I would definitely go back again if they patched it in to try it and experience it even deeper like that. But that being said, yes, maybe as you're walking in the outside street area before you even get into the building, like the very beginning of the game, you think about it. And then after that, it's like you almost just kind of forget because it just throws you back to the way it always has been playing games with a controller in your hand. You know, there's lately over the last few years with the Move controllers, but you just forget. You know, well, at least I did. So no, it didn't really bother me or take away any of the experience, you know, at all. But yes, I would go back and replay it with those controls. That would be pretty sick.
Excellent. And now you touched on the beginning of the game where you're outside the apartment building. And I guess this is sort of a nice sort of segue into how the game plays a little bit or maybe what the game's capable of throwing at you. I love that it very subtly screws with your head, like kind of constantly,
yes.
Right? You're inside this computer simulation. The whole thing is supposed to be a computer simulation of this scientist. God, I forget his name. Raymond Hayes, I think.
Hayes. Yeah, it is
right?
Hayes.
And it's supposed to be his apartment building and a recreation of his life with his wife and his kid and stuff. And that's sort of what you're experiencing through this weird virtual recreation. And so you're outside of the apartment building and you're sort of outside the matrix at first, right? Like it hasn't rendered close enough to you.
Completely, yeah.
Right? And so you walk toward the building, you start walking around, you're picking up random scraps of paper and they're flickering like
Boston,
it's a pour. Boston, exactly.
There's scraps of paper. There's old like tickets, newspapers. You know, it says Boston. It was in 2011, wasn't it? I
I think
think was
so.
the date on one of the papers. Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, so like I was like, oh yeah, yeah, this kind of looks like Boston. You know, it's an old apartment building. But yeah, like I and right off the bat as well, I enjoyed the look of it. You know, there was something about it that the flicker of everything, along with the realism, but not ultra realism to everything. There was something about it, and then just going into the first door there, and that's where you experience the first little puzzle too. And I love puzzle games like this type of puzzle adventure game is fucking right up my alley.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
yeah.
How is this game different than, or how is this puzzle game different than other puzzle games? Why do you like this more than certain other ones?
I loved how fucked up it was with the sound, with I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it either,
Right.
but like with the varying noises and sentences that people are rattling off with everything, then that disjointed look to everything where it's not totally rendered in right, like the older Assassin's Creeds where you'd all of a sudden be back towards the Animus and it had that look to corners of things and certain doorknobs, and so you had to kind of go between worlds in a sense sometimes to grab an object, flip a switch that would load up kind of like a different render of that same environment. So I just really dug, and it separated itself from other puzzle games by having that really trippy, fucked up look, feel, and just a real creative, but not overly complicated way of joining the puzzles and the way to solve them. You know?
Yeah. Yeah. And just to clarify, you mentioned at the beginning of the show that that we were going to talk about the Walter test case demo. Uh,
Yeah.
so a couple things, right? So there is the Walter test case demo that came out like a week or so before Transference itself, and it's called a demo. So you would figure, oh man, if I'm curious if I should buy the game, I should play this demo. And then if
Yeah.
you're like, if I already own the game, I don't need to play the demo. But I don't think what they don't clarify enough that this demo is a whole separate side story.
Completely. Yeah. It's awesome. It's great. Yeah. It's and I almost want to say it's necessary because originally I did it that one, then Transference.
Mm.
When we were doing this episode, I did it the opposite, Transference, then the Walter test case. And I found that, oh, yes, it answered. I don't know. It just clicked with certain things with me where just the game, you get an idea. You can round up about what you think everything's really about, but it doesn't lay it flat out like beginning, middle, end. It's a little bit more, it's a word ambiguous than that, but not
Yeah.
solely. I mean, there's something about it. But the Walter test case is a little bit, it laid it out more of like, all right, okay. I don't know. At least that's how I felt. What about you?
I mean, I think it's crazy that they gave us this whole separate situation where like it's just not part of the game. It's like, yeah, it's going to sell you on the final game. It's going to sell you. It's going to convince you to get the final game, but it's not at all part of the game. Usually, it's like a little
Yeah.
vertical slice. It reminds me of like back when the Beatles were around, right? They would release a single to
Mhm.
and you'd go buy the single, but the single wasn't on the full album that just came out. But I don't remember a band after the Beatles ever doing that. I feel like
Yeah.
singles were always part of the full album, and that's what demos usually are, part of the full game. And to have this
Yeah.
being a completely separate experience was awesome. But I sort of just wish it was part of the main game because the main game is kind of short, right? It's about two
It
hours
is.
long.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing here, the biggest takeaway is that I think the Walter test case demo is the best part of Transference. I think it's the best, it's the scariest
Yeah.
part of the game, and
Yeah.
it's the most interesting. And so I think if they somehow were able to shoehorn that into the final game, it would have made an overall better package.
It's somehow easier to connect with that one than it is with the regular game, if you know what I mean. The story behind it in a
Mm.
weird way. So yeah, it's more disturbing as well.
Yeah.
But not to take away from Transference itself whatsoever. But if nobody's played it and then they do, they'll see why we're saying this. it's definitely disturbing, and there's something a little heavier about it. But I can't say that's better than Transference itself at
Right.
all. It's so different in a weird way too.
And another another weird difference is that I played Transference today on my PlayStation 5.
Yeah,
and
yeah,
and I
yeah,
could not play the Walter Test Case demo on my PlayStation 5.
yeah. Same here. Had the
Yep.
same issue.
For
Yep.
whatever reason, it's just one of those things that it says this is a PlayStation 4 game only, and you just can't.
Hmm.
It won't even let you download it, right?
Good thing I have my PS4 still loaded up, HDMI hooked up, and everything.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah,
a little unfortunate that that didn't carry over. Hopefully, hopefully they'll see it. Hopefully Ubisoft will see it as more than just a demo and realize that
yeah.
it's an integral part of this whole.
It needs to be there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
needs to carry over. We can't lose that to history. And we keep
No.
we keep talking about Ubisoft, but we're not talking about the other people that are behind this. That's Spectravision. You know all about Spectravision.
So this is Elijah Woods. I don't know if it's his specifically, but he has something to do with this studio big time.
Yeah, he's a big part of it. He's one of, I think, three main guys that founded the studio, and their goal was to kind of give horror movies the respect they deserve. And it kind of like giving these kind of small independent horror projects the backing that could get them seen by the world. They've made a ton of awesome movies, and this seems to really
Yeah.
fit right into their vision, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, really. Yeah, because those I fucking love, as you know, how many times have I talked about Mandy
Yeah.
and Color Out of Space, how just goddamn disturbing that movie just hit a wall with me. I will never revisit it because it was that good, that disturbing to me. So this game is just in out of like how those movies stand out amongst, the horror genre.
Mm.
This game stands out amongst the VR way of playing games. There's just I don't know. I'm almost giving away my score.
Well, how scary is it? Tell me that.
I can't say you got to play with headphones. That's definite
Hmm.
without a doubt. There's something about it where I don't want to say scary. It's not Resident Evil type of scary. This is like, like I've had trips like this. You know what I mean? There's just something really disturbing and real about it. And just like, I mean, these humans, if you will, or these consciousnesses are like trapped or just in this thing. I don't know, this it's terrifying in that kind of a way.
Yeah.
So you hear their terror as they're just trapped and lost and just confused, but not like so stale like I'm making it out to be. There's just something about that whole thing of it. And then uh I don't know.
Just like a crazy trip, like this game makes you think about things that sometimes you don't want to think about.
Yeah.
It kind of forces you into this environment where maybe things weren't great. Actually, things definitely weren't great. Um,
Yeah.
you and I both live in apartment buildings, and the other day the other night I was coming home from hanging out with a friend, and I had to walk down this entire floor that I almost never am on, and I walked
Mm.
past room after room, and I heard someone having sex, and they were very loud about it, and it
Yeah.
was at 4 o'clock in the morning. I was like kind of like in my head I was like, good for them, but but at the same time I was a little uncomfortable because it was an uncomfortable feeling because these people didn't want me as part like a witness to their lives,
Yeah.
but I was sort of part of it unintentionally. And I think that this game conveys that same feeling quite a lot because it deals with, I mean, some really dark themes. Talking about like broken homes and child abuse. And you were talking about the sound design earlier. And a lot of this game is there's an implied family around you. Like you don't often see anybody else in the game or any other characters.
Yeah.
A lot of it's full motion video on television screens,
Yeah.
or cutscenes, and so you're hearing.
Live action, by the way. I don't know if we haven't discussed that at all yet. There was
Right.
live action cutscenes in these this game.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But most of what you're experiencing from this family comes from from what you're hearing as you walk down hallways, it sounds like you can hear them in another room. And you
Yeah.
know, and there's a scared kid, and he doesn't want to be there, it sounds
Yeah.
like he's scared of his parents, and it's just
Yeah.
the implications of the sound that you're hearing
Yeah.
is just terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
and you're right. I didn't think of that, but you're right. It's definitely the uncomfortable feeling comes from the fact that you are intruding on some very personal things in this kid and this mother's life because the father scientist dude's kind of a dick, you know, let's face it, you know. Maybe not once, but became such. So yeah, I think that adds to the horror feeling and that just real heavy atmosphere to the game is the fact that you are like walking down the hall hearing things going on because it always gives that disconnected, distant, hidden behind something feel to every situation you were listening in on or even a part of, you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I don't know if we've talked about the game enough, but I feel like maybe anything we haven't discussed, maybe we can
Yeah.
hit on in our rating. Do you think we should rate this sucker?
Mm-hmm.
All right, man. What's our rating
I
scale?
do. One, fucking get this game, get it now. Incredible, amazing. Buy it several times. Give it out at Christmas as gifts because everyone will love it. They'll buy PlayStation VRs to play this game. Two, buy it for yourself at least. You'll love it. And you don't even have to wait for a sale. Just buy it for yourself. You'll love it. And then three, I mean, don't buy it. You know, I guess I got to say three is don't buy it, even though I want to say just buy it. But, anyways, you know,
This
what's
is the
our rating?
this is the strangest rating scale. You seem to want to buy it in all three. It's like one,
Yeah,
buy it.
yeah.
Two, buy it. Three, buy it.
Right? Like giving away my rating. Brian, what do you rate this sucker?
Man, okay. So some of the things we didn't touch upon is that you can play this in VR and non-VR. It's and you can kind of tell that it maybe wasn't designed to be a VR game because of the DualShock implementation, and because so you know you're walking up to doors and just hitting X. It's not nearly as impactful as reaching out and like doing this or pulling
Yeah.
the handle or picking up things and placing them somewhere else. You know, just looking at something and tapping the button and then being like, so that loses me a little bit. But it looks so good. I mean, like I hate using the term photorealistic when it comes to PSVR 1 because that gives the sense that like, oh, it's crystal clear and blah 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 blah. But damn, this is about as close as it gets. Like if
Yeah.
you're familiar with PlayStation VR 1 hardware and I say the term photorealistic, then you know what I'm talking about. This is about as close as you're going to get on PlayStation VR 1. It is absolutely a beautiful game. The way they play with color and light and the way that they fuck with your head by, again, I talked about that first section, like before you even enter the building, you like walk around the building and you're already back from where you started before you should be. Like that's a mind trip right there. But then
Yeah.
sometimes you'll walk into a room and you'll be like, oh wait, I need to go back where I came from and open the same door and it's a closet instead of the hallway you were just walking down.
Yeah.
And then like the environments will flicker as if, you know, again, like it's a bad simulation. But the entire kitchen is flickering. Like I didn't even know you could do that to environments in PSVR. Like I didn't know there was horsepower that was strong enough to make this rendered environment kind of warp and twist while you're just looking at it. It's like, geez, this is it's doing crazy things that just mess with you, and you're like, so you're never totally sure. I love saying this about horror games, that you're never totally sure what the developers are capable of, and that's the scariest part because you don't know if they're going to throw a jump scare at you or if they're just going to keep raising the tension like for the next 2 hours and never deliver. And I'll tell you that these guys deliver constantly, but never in the way that you'd expect from a traditional horror game. It made me feel so uncomfortable because obviously growing up, you know, you knew the kids that came from broken homes and that were abused, and this kind of gives you an insight into their lives and be like, man, I'm like, it brought so many memories back about some of my friends that I hadn't thought about in like 35 years. You know, I mean, like, oh man, it's like I remember having sleepovers at their house and being like, this is how you live. Like my parents never talked to me like this, right? It's just absolutely crazy and brought back some really strange memories. You know, and every single item I picked up in the game at a certain point started making sense. You know, you pick up these random, you know, items that just seem like they're just there for no reason. They just to give you something to pick up and be like, oh, pick this up and look at it. Oh, ha ha ha,
Filler.
right?
Yeah.
Totally filler. But then as the game progresses, it sort of feels like a beautiful mind where all the pieces start coming together, and you're like, oh my god, that newspaper article totally makes sense now. And that phone message I heard, blah blah blah, that was just in the background.
Yeah.
You know, as the story progresses, it like sort of comes together, and you're like, holy crap, I think I understand what they're trying to tell me, and it's beautiful but like sad and scary.
Yeah.
And so, you know, as as a person that's looking out for, for all the gamers out there trying to say, hey man, like, spend your money in the best possible way you can, I want to say too, because the game's been $5 before, it's been $5 multiple times, and I want you to get a good deal on it. But
Yeah.
as somebody who loves video games and has to rate this one, it's an unbelievable experience. And I know it's only 2 hours long, but it's an amazing $25 experience. It's an amazing 2 hours. And so just because of the high level of quality that this thing offers, I mean, I have to give it a one. But just know that it's going to take you into some dark places that I don't know if you're ready to go to. It's going to be a tough little trip.
Yeah.
What about you,
Nice.
man?
So, like you, I mean, I'd almost forgotten about this title, which surprises me just because we've, you know, tackled so many. I don't know what it was. I kind of just forgot about this title.
Yeah.
So going back to it, I was like, oh, and hearkening back to my first time playing this game, I just thought that, like you, I thought the visual look of everything. I never experienced any weird tracking issues. It's a slow paced game, so I don't see there being tracking issues. But I didn't experience any kind of disjointed, trying to pick up an object and it thinks I'm facing the other way. That never happened.
Yeah.
In the game with the sound design, they never just constantly repeat. So it's not like the answer machine to what you were saying earlier that says a message. It's not like if you go back to it, it's going to play that same message again. No, it's something different slightly, or no message that comes out of that one. But when you flip a switch and go to an alternate loadout, then there's a different message. Or sometimes, I don't know, there's just so much you pick up as with the sound, and it's constantly happening for the most part too, and that adds to the heaviness as the time progresses, which makes that 2 hours totally enough, where you end the game wanting more. But like, that's it. Like, I think if it gave you more, then it might be too much. You know what I mean? I think 2 hours is a good point for all of the emotions it was trying to deliver.
Mm.
More than that would do too much of one of those emotions and kind of derail the whole experience. So I'm not saying another Transference type of a game from those guys is something I don't want. No, I'm not saying that whatsoever. I'm just, with this, that length of time, I think is perfect
Yeah.
for the experience it was trying to give. I didn't feel disconnected with using a dual shock, but that might be me personally because I don't mind it. And visually, I thought everything was great. Seeing the things drawn on the wall, I hate you, nobody likes me, and all these weird things hidden there. And then the dog was the best friend. The puzzles, the puzzles weren't overly complicated, but they made you think a little bit. You know what I mean? Like, and they weren't stupid, like, I mean, some of them were just search and find type of things. But then when you'd search and find that magnet that went on the kid's door, and I'm not giving anything away.
Nope.
You would find that, that hallway's now closets, so I can't go out that door. Can't go out that door. Now I'm going to go in and explore the whole new garage area and forget about that piece. So it really keeps puzzle pieces in your mind, because then there's a point where you're like, the puzzle pieces, the hall, boom, you know what I mean? But like, that might not be for 36 minutes, So I love the pacing. If I was to give a complaint to this game, I would say I felt like I moved too slow, but I understand why they had it at that speed, because any faster would make that experience quicker, which I think would then give too much of certain emotions and derail the whole experience, as opposed to being longer than 2 hours and doing the same effect. So I think the speed helped, keep that experience where it needed to be. So I, without a doubt, I mean, if Resident Evil wasn't for $60, a 15-hour experience for me, that was a horror experience, but in a different way, then this would be my number one VR game out of all of them I've played. It is my favorite. It's a solid one for me. But yeah, if Resident Evil for double the price didn't give you, I don't even some number of times amount more experience for, you know what I mean, then it would be my number one. But yeah, so this is my number two. It's not
Excellent.
shit, but it's my number two.
I do wish I had a
I
platinum
love it.
trophy. I just looked it up and I was like, oh man, like to give you a reason to replay this game. I mean, there are audio logs to find, and there are ways to complete the game 100%. But I just felt like without a platinum trophy, I didn't feel like going back and playing the entire thing right after I finished it. Like it was great. It was absolutely great that I kind of hadn't played this for, I don't know, a year or two.
Yeah.
And it was nice seeing it with fresh eyes and going in and being like, oh man, it's
Yeah.
like it was nice revisiting this world. But there are games like Resident Evil 7 that I finish and I immediately go, I'm going to start this over again, and then this time I'm going to do this. And this game doesn't do that for me. This game is like
Yeah.
it's just too emotional to be like I'm going to play this over and over and over. But for a
Yeah.
platinum trophy, I would probably break that rule and say I'd play
Yeah.
this over and over and over.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
All
think
right,
doing it too many times would be like watching a movie too many times, where you'd be like, all right,
yeah, it'll lose
Maybe watch
impact
it
way too quickly.
yeah.
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 All right, you guys. This was actually a really highly requested title for us to play, which
Yeah.
is crazy because Des and I actually already did this episode. So it was nice to revisit it with you and hear your thoughts on it and give me an excuse to go back and play it. Make sure you check it out. It is playable on PlayStation 5. Unfortunately, as we said, Walter Test Case Demo not playable on PlayStation 5. So make sure you do play that on your PlayStation 4.
Yeah.
Very strange. Hopefully they'll fix that. But let us know in the comments below what you thought of Transference, the Walter Test Case demo. Let us know what other games you want us to play, and I'm sure we'll tackle each and every one of them at some point over the next 7.5 years.
Yeah.
For another episode of Why We Love PlayStation VR, that's Jeremy King,
That's Brian Paul.
and we love you all.